Step 1. Hook, 20 to 30 seconds. Bruce Lee did not use force. That was what confused the witnesses first. Inside a closed training hall, a female authority known for moving heavier bodies applied correct technique, and nothing happened. Bruce Lee remained where he stood. Those present later said the outcome was clear before anyone could explain why. San Diego, California. Naval Training Annex. March 14, 1972. Tuesday, 10:17 a.m. The facility was operating on schedule. Instruction had begun early, following routines that did not invite deviation. Concrete corridors carried the sound of boots and short commands. Doors opened and closed with purpose. Equipment was laid out precisely where it had been the day before. Nothing about the morning suggested an interruption, let alone an audience. This was not a place designed for spectators. Access was limited. Names were checked. Movements were observed without comment. Those inside understood the difference between presence and permission. You were either meant to be there or you were not. Bruce Lee was present without ceremony. There was no announcement attached to his arrival, no formal introduction to the room. He was brought in quietly, accompanied by someone already known to the staff. He wore no uniform, no insignia, nothing to indicate rank or authority within the space. That absence mattered. Those who noticed him did not react immediately. A few continued their tasks, assuming he would leave as quietly as he had arrived. Others watched without staring, registering the anomaly without assigning meaning to it. The atmosphere shifted slowly. It was not disruption that changed the room, but attention. Conversations shortened. Instructions became more precise. People began to look up when they spoke, measuring whether they were being overheard. The space felt tighter, though nothing had moved. There were no seats arranged, no cleared demonstration area, no expectation of an event. Yet people began to linger. Instructors finished explanations and did not immediately move on. Trainees paused longer between drills. Those with no direct role found reasons to remain nearby. The room filled in a way that did not match instruction schedules. Whispers began to circulate, not questions, statements offered without ownership. Someone mentioned Bruce Lee's background. Someone else corrected a detail quietly. A third dismissed it, then stayed anyway. No one addressed him directly. The feeling was not excitement. It was uncertainty. This was a controlled environment built to remove ambiguity. Procedures existed to eliminate interpretation. What Bruce Lee represented did not fit cleanly into that structure. He was not there to be trained. He was not there to train. His presence created a gap in definition. The lighting emphasized that gap. Fluorescent panels washed the room evenly, leaving no shadows to hide in. There was no dramatic contrast, no focal point. Everything was visible, which made the lack of explanation more pronounced. Nothing in the space suggested preparation for testing or demonstration. People sensed this should not be happening here. Late arrivals noticed immediately. They slowed when entering, scanning faces rather than equipment. A few exchanged looks and said nothing. The routine continued, but its rhythm felt altered, as if waiting for instruction that had not yet been given. Bruce Lee did not move to the center of the room. He remained near the wall, hands relaxed, posture neutral. He did not examine the equipment. He did not watch the trainees. He appeared to be waiting, though for what was unclear. That restraint drew more attention than assertion would have. Someone finally asked quietly whether this was scheduled. No one answered. What followed was not agreement, but accommodation. Space opened subtly. Conversations drifted toward the same question, without forming it aloud. The facility, designed to resist improvisation, began to hold it. Witnesses later described the moment the same way. It felt like routine had paused, not stopped, but suspended, while something unplanned waited to take shape.
She was already established long before Bruce Lee entered the room. Her authority did not depend on introduction. It was visible in the way others adjusted when she moved, how conversations shortened, how instructions were followed without repetition, how bodies aligned without being told. Rank was not announced, it was practiced. It lived in habit. She wore a standard training uniform, functional and unadorned. Nothing about it drew attention. Years of use had shaped it to her frame rather than the other way around. Her build suggested strength maintained for purpose, not display. Brawn through the shoulders, solid through the hips, balanced without excess. She stood with weight evenly distributed, a posture so familiar it appeared unremarkable. That was part of its authority. Those under her instruction respected her without negotiation. She had earned that respect through consistency, through demonstrations that did not escalate, through corrections delivered once and followed immediately. When physical instruction was required, it was decisive and contained. There was no spectacle attached to her methods. She did not raise her voice. She did not repeat herself. She was known for leverage, not brute force, not aggression, control. The ability to move larger bodies without strain, the ability to stop momentum without visible effort. Those who trained under her spoke about it quietly, often after hours, as if explaining it too directly might reduce its credibility. The environment responded to her presence automatically. When she entered the training area, drills adjusted without instruction, equipment was repositioned, trainees aligned themselves more precisely. The room, already structured, became tighter around her. Space behaved differently when she occupied it. Bruce Lee stood outside that structure. He was not in uniform. He held no rank. There was nothing about his appearance that signaled authority within this system. He was leaner than most in the room, shorter than some of the trainees. His build suggested speed and conditioning, but not the kind of mass typically respected here. That contrast was noted immediately. Some dismissed it, others watched more closely. A few assumed his presence was ceremonial, temporary, or symbolic. No one treated him as a challenger yet, not openly. She noticed him without reacting. There was no visible change in her posture when she became aware of Bruce Lee, no narrowing of attention, no acknowledgement. She continued instruction as if nothing unusual had entered the space. That composure reinforced her authority more than confrontation would have. When Bruce Lee was finally addressed, it was indirectly. A brief exchange between senior staff clarified his purpose in minimal terms. Not an evaluation, not a formal test, an observation, a request. The language was careful, stripped of implication. The trainer listened without interruption. Her expression did not change. She did not question the premise. She did not challenge the necessity. She looked once at Bruce Lee, assessing him the way she assessed everyone else, not through reputation, but through posture, balance, and stillness. Bruce Lee did not respond in kind. He did not step forward. He did not adjust his stance. He did not hold her gaze. He remained where he was, hands relaxed, weight centered, as if the space did not require him to claim it. That restraint unsettled some observers. This was an environment where authority asserted itself physically when required, where rank was reinforced through demonstration. Bruce Lee's refusal to participate in that language created uncertainty about where he belonged in the hierarchy forming around him. The trainer turned fully toward him then, not as a challenge, as acknowledgement. There was no hostility in her posture, only evaluation. She did not square herself theatrically. She stood as she always did, balanced, grounded, ready without anticipation. The room felt the shift immediately. This was no longer routine instruction, but it was not yet a test. It was the moment when authority recognized an unknown variable and chose not to dismiss it.
The room began to change before anyone acknowledged it. Instruction continued, but its rhythm loosened. Commands were still given, movements were still executed, yet the precision that normally carried the room forward began to stall between sequences. Trainees completed drills and did not rotate out immediately. They adjusted equipment that did not need adjustment. They checked notes already memorized. Watching began to replace doing. No one announced a shift in purpose, but Bruce Lee's presence had altered it anyway. What had been a training environment now held an unspoken question. The routines remained intact, but their reason felt temporarily suspended, as if the room itself was waiting to understand what role it was meant to play next. The trainer recognized this before anyone else. She shortened the next instruction cycle, not abruptly, but deliberately. Movements concluded cleanly. Equipment was gathered and set aside earlier than scheduled. The floor cleared in a way that suggested preparation without admitting intent. No order was given to stand back, yet people did. The perimeter formed naturally, guided more by discipline than curiosity. There was no audience announced, yet witnesses gathered. Senior staff leaned against the walls, arms folded, expressions unreadable. Junior instructors stood closer than necessary, careful not to appear eager. A small number of civilians, present for reasons unrelated to this moment, remained silent, sensing that their proximity would not be offered again. The lighting did not change, but attention did. Under the fluorescent panels, the center of the room became exposed. No shadows, no angles to retreat into. The openness removed drama and replaced it with scrutiny. Whatever happened next would be seen clearly, without interpretation offered by darkness or distance. The trainer stepped into that space first, not with showmanship, with familiarity. She placed her feet where the floor was most stable. Her posture remained neutral, shoulders relaxed, spine aligned, weight distributed evenly. This was not a stance meant to threaten. It was a stance meant to function. Those who trained under her recognized it immediately. This was how she stood when instruction became physical. Bruce Lee did not mirror her. He remained where he was, a few steps back, hands loose at his sides. His posture suggested readiness without commitment. He did not warm up. He did not test his footing. He did not adjust his clothing or shake out his hands. The stillness unsettled the room. Some interpreted it as deference, others as uncertainty. A few recognized it as refusal to perform. Whispers resumed, quieter this time, not rumors now, but assumptions. People spoke in technical language, leverage, center, balance. Someone mentioned mass, someone else countered with structure. The vocabulary stayed clinical, as if analysis might keep the moment contained. No one asked aloud what would happen next. The trainer did, not with words. She looked once at Bruce Lee, then at the cleared space, then back at him. The exchange was brief and wordless. It carried neither challenge nor invitation. It was a question of parameters. Bruce Lee answered with a nod. One movement, small, controlled. It indicated understanding, not agreement. He did not clarify intent. He did not request conditions be stated publicly. He accepted the ambiguity as part of what was unfolding. That nod shifted the room. The perimeter tightened slightly. Conversation stopped mid-sentence and did not resume. The sound of ventilation became noticeable. Someone cleared their throat and immediately stopped. This was no longer observation, it was expectation. The trainer adjusted her position by a fraction, aligning herself more squarely toward Bruce Lee. He shifted his weight just enough to center it, the movement barely perceptible unless watched closely. To those who noticed, it read as preparation without provocation. No countdown followed, no signal was given. The room held its breath, not in anticipation of impact, but in recognition that something irreducible was about to occur. Not a contest, not a demonstration for display. A test whose outcome, witnesses would later say, was already beginning to take shape before anything moved. What followed did not announce itself as a beginning. There was no command given, no signal to mark a transition from observation to action. The room remained exactly as it had been moments earlier, fluorescent light steady, air circulating, equipment resting where it had been placed. Yet witnesses later agreed that the test had already begun, not through motion, but through the removal of uncertainty. The trainer stepped forward first. Not abruptly, not with force. It was a controlled approach, measured in distance rather than intent. She closed the space between herself and Bruce Lee the way she always did when instruction turned physical, establishing proximity without aggression, asserting parameters before effort. Bruce Lee did not respond by bracing. He did not widen his stance. He did not lower his center. He did not prepare to counter. He remained upright, balanced, his posture unchanged. That detail unsettled several observers immediately. This was a controlled environment accustomed to resistance. Every physical exercise here assumed opposition, weight against weight, leverage against leverage. Bruce Lee's refusal to adopt that language removed a reference point the room relied on. The trainer placed her hands deliberately, not grabbing, not striking, positioning. Her contact was correct, precise, consistent with her training. Those familiar with her methods noted that she was not testing strength yet. She was establishing structure, confirming alignment, distance, and contact points. The fundamentals were in place. She applied pressure, gradually. Bruce Lee did not yield. He did not tense either. Those closest noticed the absence before they understood its significance. There was no visible strain in his posture, no shift in his feet, no tightening in his shoulders. The pressure registered, but it did not translate into motion. The trainer adjusted. This was expected. She recalibrated her hand placement, altered the angle, increased intent. The technique was sound. In prior demonstrations, this sequence reliably produced movement, at minimum a correction step, often a displacement. Nothing happened. Bruce Lee remained where he was, not rigid, not resisting, present. Witnesses later struggled to describe what they were seeing because it did not fit familiar categories. This was not force against force. It was not stillness overpowering effort. It was closer to absence, no opening for leverage to work against, no response for technique to resolve. The trainer paused, only briefly. That pause mattered. It was not confusion, it was assessment. She checked alignment, distance, contact. Everything was correct. The conditions were met. The expected result did not arrive. She applied pressure again, decisively this time. Bruce Lee's posture remained unchanged. There was no sound, no indication of effort on either side. The room grew quiet enough that the hum of the lights seemed louder than before. Observers leaned forward without realizing it, searching for evidence that something was happening. Then the trainer released contact, not abruptly, not in frustration, in completion. She stepped back on her own. Bruce Lee did not move to follow. He did not adjust. He did not acknowledge the room. His stance remained neutral, as if the demonstration had concluded exactly where it was meant to. No one spoke. The absence of reaction carried more weight than success would have. There was no need to explain what had occurred. Those present understood the outcome, not because of what they had seen move, but because of what had not. The demonstration was over, not because time had expired, not because effort had failed, but because nothing further could be shown. The room did not react all at once. There was no collective intake of breath, no audible response to mark what had just concluded. What followed unfolded unevenly as understanding moved through the space at different speeds. Some observers recognized immediately that the demonstration had ended. Others waited, expecting instruction, repetition, or clarification that did not come. The trainer remained where she had stepped back. She was not out of breath. Her posture was upright. Nothing in her stance suggested exertion or failure. Yet something had shifted in the way she held herself. The certainty that had governed her movements moments earlier no longer settled cleanly into place. She adjusted her footing. It was a familiar correction, one she had used countless times while teaching, redistributing weight, checking balance. This time it did not resolve. Her stance shifted, then shifted again, as if searching for a conclusion that would not arrive. She looked down briefly, then stopped, recognizing that the issue was not beneath her feet. She looked at Bruce Lee. Not with irritation, not with disbelief, with reassessment. Those closest noticed the change immediately. This was not how she looked at trainees, not how she looked at instructors. This was evaluation without hierarchy, a recalibration prompted by something that had not responded to pressure, technique, or expectation. Bruce Lee did not hold the moment. He did not meet her gaze for more than a second. He did not step forward to explain or clarify. He inclined his head slightly, not as acknowledgement, not as dismissal, simply as part of turning away. The refusal to continue was complete. That absence unsettled the room more than confrontation would have. Someone near the perimeter spoke too quickly, offering a technical explanation. Another voice followed, countering it just as quietly. The discussion remained restrained, framed in terminology rather than accusation. Leverage was mentioned, structure, center. No one raised their voice. Others said nothing at all. They watched the trainer instead. She did not argue. She did not attempt to repeat the demonstration. She did not suggest an adjustment or request another attempt. She stood still, listening to fragments of explanation circulating around her, as if they belonged to a different exercise entirely. When a senior staff member asked whether she wished to continue, she shook her head once. The movement was small, decisive. That was when the room accepted what had occurred. Bruce Lee was already stepping back toward the wall. His movement did not draw attention to itself. Those in his path shifted instinctively, making space without instruction. He did not look back. He did not wait for acknowledgement. The discussions continued behind him, quiet, technical, unresolved. Some insisted the demonstration had been incomplete. Others proposed conditions that might have produced a different outcome. A few stopped speaking altogether, recognizing that repetition would not change what they had seen. The trainer did not participate. She remained where she was, eyes lowering briefly toward the floor before returning to neutral. Her authority within the room had not diminished, but it had changed shape. It was no longer unquestioned. Her certainty had not been taken by force. It had encountered something that did not move and could not be made to. The facility returned to routine without announcement. Drills resumed. Equipment was gathered and repositioned. Instructors moved on to the next segment of training as if the previous hour had unfolded exactly as scheduled. Commands were given. Responses were immediate. The structure reasserted itself with the quiet efficiency it was designed to maintain. No debrief followed. There was no formal discussion, no summary offered to those present. In a place governed by procedure, silence often functioned as closure. What could not be categorized did not require explanation. It was simply not repeated. Bruce Lee was no longer in the room. Those who noticed his departure did not mark the moment. He left without collecting attention, without signaling conclusion. By the time anyone thought to look for him again, he had already passed back through controlled access points and into anonymity. The corridors returned to carrying only boots and instructions. In the days that followed, the account fractured. Outside the facility, nothing concrete circulated. There were no records, no reports, no mention of an unusual visit. At most, vague references surfaced, an observation that had not proceeded as expected, a demonstration that ended without comment. Without footage or documentation, the moment resisted fixed description. Inside the circle of witnesses, the retellings were consistent. Those who had stood close enough described the same absence of resistance, the same failure of leverage to find purchase, the same moment where expectation dissolved without spectacle. They spoke cautiously, often lowering their voices even in private, as if restraint were necessary to keep the memory accurate. The trainer did not pursue the matter further. She continued her work as before, respected, authoritative, unchanged in rank or responsibility. Yet those who trained under her noticed a difference. She demonstrated more slowly. She emphasized structure over effort. When discussing control, she spoke less about force and more about alignment. She never referenced the incident directly. When asked privately, she did not deny it. She said only that some systems fail when they meet something that does not respond to pressure. Bruce Lee's name circulated quietly after that. Those who had not been present spoke freely, speculating about technique or dismissing the story as exaggeration. Those who had been there did not correct them. They listened, then allowed the conversation to move on, understanding that repetition would turn observation into performance. Years later, no documentation surfaced, no report, no footage, no official acknowledgement. Only a careful consensus among witnesses who shared the same conclusion without rehearsing it, that what occurred could not be demonstrated again without becoming something else, that explanation would have reduced it, that certainty had reached its limit without being challenged by force. They did not describe it as a test won or lost. They did not describe it as dominance. They remembered it as a moment when a controlled system encountered something immovable and learned where its assumptions ended. And in that facility, among people trained to rely on structure and control, that understanding remained.